What is your reaction to this?
Well, it's just never safe to go home as a journalist when you're covering this president. So it was about this time yesterday that the Washington Post story hit, and then today at 5:30 in the afternoon, the New York Times comes out with what appears to be a blockbuster story about Donald Trump asking Jim Comey to end the Flynn investigation the day after Flynn resigned. Now, it's important to point out that the New York Times that Comey conveyed this information in a memo. The New York Times story cites two people who have seen the memo, but they have not seen the memo itself. And the White House, as you've reported, is issuing a stern denial. Obviously, doing something like that raises all kinds of new questions.
The New York Times is reporting that Trump told Comey, quote, "I hope you can let this go." As per the investigation into Michael Flynn, the White House is saying this is not a truthful account. The president is about to head off to Europe. What does this mean for him and his tenure?
Well, I think we're a long way away from talking about something happening to his tenure, but it does. He is going to be leaving Washington at a time that's going to create a news vacuum in this town. Congress will be in session. There will be calls from the Democrats for a special counsel at the Justice Department to investigate this, which because it's at a time when there is no FBI director, either interim, well, no permanent or interim choice, and Donald Trump has suggested he was going to try and make that pick before he leaves. So the confluence of events, the idea that he has to pick an FBI candidate and he's leaving for Europe couldn't be a more tumultuous time in D.C. And the drumbeat is just going to continue. This does raise, I mean, people are talking about what kind of law this would break, and obstruction of justice comes to mind, although that's sometimes very hard to prove. And of course, the White House is denying it ever happened. So it does sound like something Donald Trump, the real estate magnate, might say if one of his employees got a traffic ticket. But he's president, and you just can't do that.
Marty, you've been covering Washington for a very long time. I mean, seems to be a precedent-breaking president every single second. Historically, give us some perspective. Have we ever seen anything like this?
Well, there are some allusions to Watergate. I was actually in D.C. during Watergate, at the time working for the Wall Street Journal. And at its height, it was a daily watching the New York Times or obviously the Washington Post and see what development they had. The difference is that was just once a day. This president, there's a new development seemingly every hour, and the news cycle is much faster. We all know about social media. We all know about how Twitter has developed into a news feed. So in that sense, the pace is unprecedented, and there's no sign of it slowing down. Just when you think it's safe, it's not.
What are the next steps from here? Do you think Republicans will, at this point, change their support for this president or not? Well,
we have been looking for signs of the Republican leadership distancing themselves from this president. There really hasn't been any groundswell of abandoning him in any significant way. Obviously, some people like Mitch McConnell on our air today say things like they wish there would be less drama, but at a certain point, you would think that they want to get to the bottom of whether or not this president understands what the rules are in terms of legal behavior. At the very least, what I think, unless it can be unequivocally proved that this New York Times story is wrong, Congress is going to want to see that memo from Jim Comey, and they will subpoena it, and we'll see whether the Justice Department turns it over.
Of all the developments then, let's just say in the last 7 days, is this by far the worst? Is this potentially the most consequential?
Yeah, I actually think it is, if it's true, because even the divulging of intelligence gathering is not illegal. It may have been dumb, but that's not breaking the law. This potentially could be something that you could be indicted for. So it takes it to another level of seriousness that we haven't seen. Now, again, we have not independently confirmed the New York Times story. No one else has matched it yet. We'll see if anybody else does. But if the Times story is accurate, a memo does exist, and it's clear, we can then go and find out, if we ever see that memo, whether the allegation is true.